Good morning, everybody. Welcome to meeting number 19 of the Standing Committee on Science and Research. The committee is meeting to study artificial intelligence. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and also the members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either Floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Just before we start the meeting, I just want to let all the members know that like to inform the committee members that the Office of the Minister of Industry, the Honourable Melanie Joly, has informed the clerk that she would be available to appear before the committee in the new year. So just for everyone's information that she will be appearing before the committee. Yes, MP Noor Mohammed.
Is that all the things you had? Because I wanted to say something about this. Is there more that you want to speak to on this one, or because I wanted to
No, yeah, that's what I want to let everyone know, that we have received the correspondence and she will be appearing. So we don't know the schedule of our committee meetings for the next year. Once the calendar comes out, we will schedule the meeting with Minister Melanie Joly. Yes, MP Noor Mohammed.
On the basis of the fact that at the last couple of meetings, I know that my colleague Mr. Persaud-Lachhman had been trying to get the minister to come. Perhaps now that we know this, it would behoove us to just move that we ask her to come to the committee. I'm happy to put a motion forward that she comes to the committee by no later than whatever date, end of January or the first week of February, whatever it is, and that we nail the date down as promptly as possible. I don't know if there's a willingness to do it. I'm happy to move a motion to do that in that context. But I think if we've got this openness to do it, we should just get it done quickly.
Yeah, no. So, once we have the calendar, the time of the meeting, we will schedule that meeting.
So, on that basis, do you want me to move a motion saying that she should come?
Please go ahead. Yes.
Because I think if we've got this, let's just get it.
Yeah, go ahead. And then I have MP Blanchet-Jonca.
Okay, so, let me think about something. Okay, I made some notes here. That we would invite the minister to come no later than, February 5th? That's the first 4 weeks in, and then that's just get it on and say we want a date from her ASAP. So if I were to craft it in formal language, that the Minister of Industry, the Minister of ISED, appear before this committee, schedule an appearance before this committee no later than February 5th.
February 26th, we are coming back.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe the end of February might be a better idea. So just
you want to do end of February?
Yeah.
End of February? I would do it. No, I would say sooner. I'm sorry. I appreciate that, but I think we should say earlier February. I'm not trying to paint her into a corner, but let's just get it over with in the first 4 meetings. February. I would say February 5. But if you want to be more generous, you can. I would say February 5.
Is her attendance to speak to AI, or our colleague has a motion that speaks to mandate and other
I'm saying
aspects.
Mandate. I'm saying all mandate.
One person at a time, please.
Again, my colleagues.
Okay, one person at a time. MP Noor Mohammed has the floor, and then I have the speaking order. I have Blanchet-Jonca, and then MP Mahal. And MP Baldinelli, would you like to speak? Okay, I will add you. So
I would just say, so my motion would be to bring her on all aspects of her mandate, not just on AI, and that addresses the challenge we've been having of trying to shoehorn it into a study on AI. But it also, I would say we make it on mandate and we put the February 5 date to it so that it's not dragged, inter alia into however many months it might take.
You will have to send that motion in writing to the clerk.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, we need to send it out to all the MP. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are back on January 26th, yes. So one person at a time. Yeah, one person at a time. We have a speaking order. Okay. So we have a motion which has been brought by MP Noor Mohammed. Sorry to the witnesses, we are just coming let's sort it out. Yes, MP Blanchet-Jonca.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I'm quite pleased that we are speaking about this meeting. I mean, we do have witnesses here today. We did have something scheduled already, but I am pleased to see that on the part of the government that they have done a little bit of soul searching over the past while. Because earlier on, I wouldn't have wanted to give the impression that they were trying to avoid the appearance of a minister. But I'm rather surprised, Madam Chair. I can see that you want to move things along, but last Monday, on the 24th of November, I tabled a motion in order to discuss the invitation of the minister and make sure that Minister Solomon come to speak within our study on AI. But there's something here that I don't understand on how we work as a committee. We discuss some things. Then you, on your side, you consider this, you look into it, you kind of take some steps, and it's almost as if there were two groups or two clans. There's the chair and the government side, and then there's the clan of the committee that talks about other things. That's what I'm seeing here today. So you have brought forward information with respect to the invitation of a minister, and I do appreciate that. But there was never a motion adopted to that effect. I'll just recall that on the 24th of November last, in public, we brought forward this motion. Colleagues opposite tried to sort of invent stories that really don't make any sense. They said, well, maybe it would be possible to bring in a minister, but we couldn't really bring a report before Parliament. In the 4 years I've been here, Madam Chair, I have never seen this type of thing. That is to say, things are discussed in a committee and where we decide not to bring it before Parliament. But there were colleagues last week who were saying, well, no, it's not possible to do this and to report to the House. But the minister is going to make some very important points here in committee. And it's important that parliamentarians be able to be made aware of that. We're making discussions that really concern other parliamentarians. So last week we were talking about one thing. And today, there's this surprise information, and it's making me very uncomfortable. I'm not sure that we're headed in the right direction when there's a decision to operate like this. You know, things happen behind the scenes, and then we learn today of what's happening. I get a message from a colleague expressing their goodwill, but that's not a functional way to operate. And it shows actually that there isn't much transparency on the part of the government. Last Monday, all I asked was that we invite the minister to come. On the 4th of November, there was a budget that was brought forward, and it had a $78 billion deficit involved. There's some good news, there's some bad news, but as parliamentarians, we have a right to ask questions on the direction the government is taking, and that can be done within the framework of this committee and elsewhere. But today, we're being told, well, the minister may be able to come, may not be able to come before the holidays, maybe after. We're being told by the side opposite, maybe they can come in February. So we're talking about from December to February, the beginning of December to the beginning of February, 3 months, and a minister can't come. A minister of a G7 country cannot make time to come before a committee of parliamentarians to discuss this issue. I mean, this is pretty serious. You know, I think this is sort of like a banana republic, if you ask me. So the minister is avoiding coming and colleagues are supporting this. And all we want to be able to do is to put questions to the minister before this committee. I mean, I'm embarrassed on behalf of the government side. I'm embarrassed that they have to actually defend that kind of position. Now, I understand that perhaps the minister is a little preoccupied. I understand there was a trip to South Korea, and I understand how that might advance science in Canada. I understand that maybe she doesn't want to talk about the budget. However, one of our jobs is to invite the minister. So people have to speak the truth here. What do they want? Do they want to just protect their government and avoid the minister from coming? Do they want the people have an opportunity through parliamentarians to put questions to the minister, to be able to call the minister to come before the committee? So this is what I'm bringing up. And I would actually call on my colleagues to collaborate, to show that they're willing to collaborate, because we have to be able to act. And through you, Madam Chair, it's your role to take leadership on this through the committee. And what I'm seeing once again today is that we failed in that regard. You have shown up with information without having told us. And I went to see you last week. I was told, yeah, we'll talk about it. And actually, I even agreed to put off the meeting for the chief science advisor because I didn't necessarily want us to have to take up the debate on the motion again. But now we have this before us. And this all started on the 5th of November. We had a committee meeting. You completely skipped over the agenda, even though there was committee business that was supposed to be discussed. And you said, well, I got this information for you. Here you are. You'll be able to use it, despite the fact that we already had an agenda for that day. And here, the same thing is happening. So you call the meeting to order, and just as if by magic, government colleagues bring forward a solution, and you just open the door to that. So, that makes me rather nervous. It makes me nervous about impartiality, makes me nervous about this lack of neutrality, and it makes me nervous about a lack of objectivity. So could you please clarify why this is happening today, why these steps were taken without having consulted us before? That's my only question I have for you today.
Once we receive information, it is my duty as the chair of this committee to get that information to the members. So if we received correspondence that the minister would appear before the committee in the coming year, I have to inform the committee. So that's why I made that announcement before we could start, so that everyone knows. I have a speaking list: MP Mahal, and then MP Baldinelli, and then MP Nur Mohammed. MP Mahal.
No, I think my point was taken by...
MP Baldinelli.
He can continue. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. I'm very sympathetic to the expressed disappointment my colleague from the bloc shares. In a sense, I mean, the motion that he had proposed was several days ago. And in fact, I mean, if we had settled upon the motion that he put forward then, we could have had the minister appear in a timely manner. My understanding is the minister is going to be appearing before another committee this week. Yet, if we had settled on this motion, we could have probably had the minister here appearing as well. And unfortunately, that hasn't occurred. I also have a concern, or a question, rather, with procedural aspects. So the motion that my colleague wants to bring forward is on the motion of the minister to appear to talk about mandate and other issues. So is that a notice of motion that he'll be tabling today? Because today we're looking at AI, so it's out of the scope of what we're supposed to be doing today.
I can clarify that because the fact that I made that announcement that the minister is appearing before the committee, so it was related to that. So that's why it can...
Again, from a procedural standpoint, I agree with the disappointment and questions that my bloc member has. If we had resolved this motion days ago, which we should have, the minister would be appearing. I mean, now we hear it's not till the G7 because of the G7, and she won't be able to appear till after. Well, why is it that at first she refused to appear before another committee and yet will appear? I certainly have some...
Sorry for interrupting. I just want to clarify one thing, that we were debating that motion, and I was trying to suspend the meeting, but the meeting was adjourned so that we can hear from the chief science officer. Yeah.
Well, it could be brought up again, and it may be, in fact, brought up again, because we had asked in that motion for the minister to appear no later than or before December 15th, before we broke for the Christmas holidays. And so from my standpoint, again, I mean, from our side, I have nothing but disappointment to express to the government side. We could have handled this much more smoothly and to the benefit of all members concerned. And I don't think that happened, Madam Chair. And that's the disappointment. That did not happen. And from my standpoint, I've still got concerns. I still believe that we should try at least to see if we can get the minister here before the Christmas break. And then if not, then in the new year. But again, if we had handled this correctly, we could have had the minister appear as well as the Minister of AI, who we're getting on Wednesday. So I agree with the disappointment that's been expressed by my colleague.
MP Noor Mohammed and then MP Rana.
Well, I have to admit I'm a little bit surprised. First of all, like, with the greatest of respect à mon collègue du Bloc, si on trouve des théories de conspiration,
You know, if you start engaging in conspiracy theories, well, that's all very well. However, there was the wish to call the minister here, and I heard it at the same time as everyone else. I got the information at the same time as the rest of you from the chair.
Thought would deal with the issue, which was I thought we wanted the Minister of Industry to appear. Now I'm hearing that that's not what people want. They want to argue over a motion. If people want to argue over a motion versus having the minister here, that's their prerogative. I understood that the desire was to get the minister here as quickly as possible. Over the objection of my colleagues, some of you will have heard, I put this February 5th date in, not February 28th, to try and see if we can get her in the first 4 meetings that we've got once we come back. To my mind, if we can get her before that, great. It doesn't say that it has to be in January, it has to be in February. It says at the earliest possible date, but not after February 5. So if the idea is we want to bring the minister here, let's do it. Just to be clear, we put on the table ways in which to improve that motion that was put forward before, in particular to say, look, you've already got Minister Solomon coming on Wednesday to discuss this particular issue in the scope of his work, in the scope of the work of this study, and by extension, you could discuss his scope because it relates to this. Madame Jolie's mandate has nothing to do with the study. So the request that we were trying to make at the last meeting when we got into this debate in the first place, when, by the way, we could have, to Mr. Baldinelli's point, resolved it, but there seemed no desire to come to a compromise on this, was to say, we've got him coming, let's produce a separate motion that invites Minister Jolie to come on her mandate. Not necessarily part of this study, because I don't frankly want to limit the scope of my inquiry of Minister Jolie to just this particular study. I would like to talk to her about many other things. I would like to ask, I am sure that members opposite probably want to ask her about more than just AI in this country. So by jamming it into that motion, into this study, we are limiting our own ability to ask the minister questions. And this may surprise members opposite, but members on this side would also like to know certain things that expand outside the scope of this particular study from the Minister of Industry. And so the intention at that time was to say, look, let's not be silly with this. Let's deal with the Minister of AI who is coming on Wednesday. We don't need to worry about adding him to the motion because we've got a date, we've got an appearance, we're ready to dance on that. We don't have a date for Minister Jolie, but now we have understanding that she is coming. She's offered to come. We know when we know that she has said she wants to come. Instead of playing in theory, let's now nail her down to a date to be able to come. Let's do that in a timely fashion. Let's work as a group to be able to get that done. If that's the focus, Madam Chair, if that's what people want, that's what I was trying to do. But I have to say, I really, really take umbrage to this idea that somehow we're trying to jam Mr. Blanchet-Jonca from moving. If he wants to move the very same motion that I proposed, great. Let him do that. I would gladly support it. What I'm not going to support, and what we're not going to support, and I would imagine that members opposite probably don't want to do, is to support a motion that limits their ability to ask questions to just the scope of this particular study. And so this notion that it's a conspiracy theory and using language like banana republic, I mean, yeah, I mean, it makes for a great clip, but I'm not sure that it resonates with where people are at, right? And so if people are looking for serious conversations happening in this committee, and I would say by and large, we've done a pretty good job in this committee, Madam Chair, of making sure that we're staying on point, that we're staying on the issues that we've got. And I really dislike the fact that we've got two witnesses to whom I would love to be asking questions right now. Three witnesses. I'm sorry. 3 witnesses to whom that I would like to be asking questions right now. But I do have to make the point. You know, we went through and we wasted a whole bunch of time, and we could have suspended that meeting, but instead we adjourned so that we wouldn't waste time with the National Science Advisor. We're back in the same conversation now. Again, so I say to my colleague opposite, if he's interested in having the minister come on something beyond the scope of just this study, that's the motion I've presented. I've put the most aggressive date possible on the basis of what we know and when this committee is sitting. Let's pass that motion. Let's get a date from the minister, and let's move on to getting to the witnesses. Or we can discuss this till the cows come home, and I'm certain that we have the capacity in this group to do that. But that choice I leave to my colleagues opposite.
I have quite a list. MP Rana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As my colleague already mentioned, that Minister Office already has confirmed that she is coming. So I think we should not waste our time. We should move forward. Already we have 3 witnesses in here. And just only the time frame when she is appearing. Only we have 3 more meetings, I think, left before our break. So better, like as Talib, he mentioned the date. I think February 5th is not too far. We should wait for that date, and we should move forward right now. Thank you.
Next, I have MP Deschamps-Tarion. I would like to welcome MP Deschamps-Tarion to the committee. Now he will be the permanent member for the Science and Research Committee. Welcome, and floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup et je suis heureux de me joindre.
Thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to join this committee. I think together we're going to have some very constructive discussions in order to advance science and artificial intelligence in Canada. At least I hope so. Now, as Madam Chair mentioned, I'm a new member. I've taken the time to look at the various information that has been sent to the committee, and from what I understand, there are colleagues on the opposition side who expressed the wish to invite the minister so that she could speak to us about her mandate and taking into consideration budget 2025, because significant investments are included in that budget. So I think it's very important that we call the minister to appear before the committee so that we can better understand what those investments are and the direction that some of those investments are taking, including further detail. And from what I understand this morning, we meanwhile received a note from the minister's office letting us know that she's open to coming before this committee to speak to us about her mandate and give us further details. Now, when the chair informed the committee of this, that is to say that the minister was open to accepting the invitation to come before the committee, well, that was a very positive response. I think that was good news. It shows that there's an openness to collaboration on the part of the government. And then my colleague tabled a motion in order to make sure that this would happen in a timely fashion, because we don't want to end up having her before us in April. It's very important to have a date. So I think the way the motion was worded was actually that February 5th would be the latest date at which she would appear. So we already have a fairly busy schedule this week, and we have witnesses here today who I'm looking forward to hearing from. As a matter of fact, I have a list of questions that I want to ask to them within the framework of this study on artificial intelligence. We have a minister coming on Wednesday, so I think it's going to be very important to be able to ask these questions. Significant investments, up to $1 billion, are being provided in terms of funding under the sovereign computing strategy or AI strategy. So I have many questions I want to be able to ask. Now, if we want the time to have a good meeting with Minister Joly when she comes, we have to make sure that we have an appropriate time frame and that it happen by February 5th. If we want to meet her before February 5th, then we can do that. I mean, we only have 2 weeks left here. We have a very heavy schedule. It might happen perhaps within the first week or two when we come back. And as a new member, I'm very interested in some items. For example, recruitment and the money provided under the budget to recruit experts, international experts. I'd like to know how that's going to happen, how the money is going to be spent. Who's going to manage that fund? Who our partners are going to be? These are all very important issues that I want to be able to discuss with her. And there's the entire issue of artificial intelligence. You know, there's a budget for innovation and artificial intelligence. So I think that the motion calling on the minister to speak to us about our mandate doesn't prevent us from asking her questions about AI as well. Of course, we can ask any questions that we want to on that topic. If there are colleagues who want to ask her questions on recruitment, well, we can do that. But so from what I see is that we all agree on the importance of inviting the minister to come before the committee and to speak to us soon so that we can get more details on her mandate. I think we have a good motion before us from my colleague that would be easy to support. And when the minister comes to the committee, I'd also like to speak about the value of research in French. I'm sure that's important for other colleagues around the table. I've had constructive meetings with various stakeholders from the research sector who have asked me questions about this, and I don't have all the answers yet. So when the minister comes, I'm going to ask her questions about this. I'd like to be able to better understand how we're going to have this francophone lens that's applied to the use of funding in research. One of our strengths in Canada is the fact that we can innovate and do research in two official languages, in English and in French. When Minister Joly comes before the committee, of course I'd like to be able to ask her questions about this. And what's our recruitment strategy, for example? I'd like to know how we're going to recruit Francophone international experts, for example, because I know there's cutting-edge expertise in this area, and I know there are French language experts who are international experts. So I'd like us to have an opportunity to apply that lens so that we can promote and foster research in French. I have these kinds of questions that I want to be able to discuss with the minister. So we simply restrict ourselves to artificial intelligence. Well, then we're not going to be able to ask all these types of questions that are important. So I don't think we should necessarily restrict this to AI. It wouldn't necessarily be as fulsome a committee meeting as one that we could have, because I'd like to be able to, as I said, bring up some other points. In my view, I think that we should support the motion that my colleague brought forward this morning, that we call the minister to come as soon as possible. I don't want us to wait until spring. We as parliamentarians have several questions that we want to ask, and stakeholders are also awaiting the answers to these questions. We want to be able to go back to these people in our communities even and speak to these people. I have university campuses in my region. I'd like to be able to go back to them and to be able to give them the information that I heard here in committee. I might have other points that I'll want to raise later, but for now, that is what I wanted to say, and that's how I wanted to contribute to the meeting. I believe my colleague beside me also wants to bring up some other points, so I'll end on that.
Then MP Baltanilli and then MP Noor Mohammed. MP
Madame la Présidente, écoutez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, listen, I can see that the government once again is backpedaling, as has happened over the past several years. And from what I see, this, I have to say, is pretty historic. I represent my constituents very proudly, and no one has been able to say, no one is able to tell me why last week we weren't inviting the minister. And here all of a sudden we are. So, you know, the Liberal government, when we want to speak, interrupts us. I don't know why I'm being interrupted.
While I respect immensely the member opposite, he is misrepresenting substantially what was actually said by members on this side.
This is a point of order. MP Blanchet-Jean.
Président, je pense que vous venez de voir avec l'interaction de mon collègue.
Madam Chair, I think that this behavior shows that my colleague is not acting in good faith. He simply wants to represent the interests of his own government. And in my motion on the 4th of November, the wording was very clear. And I'll tell you what it was. Given the mandate of the Standing Committee on Science and Research, that the committee invite the Minister of Industry, Mélanie Joly, and the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation, Evan Solomon, to appear for at least 2 hours each to discuss their mandate and other related matters. Other related matters. What does that mean? Well, that means everything that's included in the budget, that these meetings take place no later than December 11th. I'm being told that it be no later or as soon as possible. I would not want it to do it before the House rises. But here they're setting February 5th, several months after the budget. I said it earlier on, beginning of December to beginning of February. That's 3 months, Madam Chair. And last week, what they didn't agree to is that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House following the meeting. So, this committee has been around since January 2021. How often have we discussed things in this committee that haven't been reported to the House? That's the challenge I'm throwing out to you. Answer me that. So, Mr. de Saint-Thériault spoke about openness and collaboration. Well, I welcome him joining the committee, but I'm going to tell him what openness and collaboration means. For a month and a half, I've been trying to track down the Minister of Industry. And as you know, science is not a word that's included in her title anymore. So that indicates the direction that science and research and innovation is taking. There's a focus on industry. Is that what openness means? When parliamentarians call on the office of the minister to obtain answers, not just once, twice. We want answers on the budget. Is that what collaboration means? I don't think collaboration and openness happens the way it's happened here. Madam Chair, the other thing that's quite incredible is this, and that shows how hypocritical this whole process is that on the 24th of November, we discussed a motion to bring forward the minister, and now it's as if all of a sudden the committee members are responsible for the minister's agenda. They've sort of said, well, maybe she'll be having a coffee and a muffin. She may not be able to make it. Maybe she won't be available. Seriously, Madam Chair, let's get back to the rules and procedures of the House. Standing committees are sovereign. If committee members want to invite the minister, invite parliamentary secretaries, or anyone else, it's not up to the committee to go and check the agenda of the minister. How should it work, Madam Chair? And please correct me if I'm wrong. From what I've understood, from what I've witnessed, the committee invites the minister and their officials. It's not up to colleagues to come here and say, well, look, we spoke with them. In the end, she'll be at the G7. She's going to be looking at submarines in South Korea. Maybe she can come after the holidays. Listen, I understand that my colleagues opposite are uncomfortable with the idea of bringing forward the minister. They sort of want to hide behind their excuses. But I think this, once again, displays the lack of transparency on the part of the government members. Madam Chair, you can see here today the kind of hypocrisy that reigns here. So you can also see it displayed when they don't want to actually report its findings to the House. Madam Chair, I challenge the member's office opposite to tell me when committee has ever decided not to present its findings to the House. I've been here since January 2021, and I've been sitting on this committee, and we've always worked in this way. But all of a sudden, they're saying, well, there's no point in reporting the findings to the House. I was shocked, actually, to hear what I heard last week. You know, they say, we'll bring the minister in, but we don't need to report to the House. There's social media, there's this, there's that, and nobody reads reports anyway. Madam Chair, I really can't quite believe what I heard. This was said publicly. I mean, do you know what kind of perception that gives parliamentarians? The image that gives parliamentarians, the lack of respect for our parliamentary institutions? My colleague said people don't read reports. I mean, it's as if the witnesses who are here today really have nothing of value to report, because reading reports really is not unimportant. Well, I absolutely disagree with my colleague. We're talking about tens of dozens of millions of dollars that we invest year after year after year to be able to undertake these studies, and they're important studies. And what they do is allow us to make recommendations to the government. But you see, Madam Chair, this is their vision. This is the government's vision that they have of democratic institutions. And, this comes from up on high. We've had a new prime minister since last April. He's hardly ever in Parliament. He travels all over the planet. And, recently what he did? He tabled legislation to circumvent other legislation. So I thought at the time, well, maybe this has already happened. We're in a crisis. But what is he doing? He's using the crisis to push his agenda forward and to circumvent other legislation. Bill C-5 was adopted in January. Now, I've hardly ever seen a gag order for things like this. After 4 weeks, the official opposition decided to use a gag order. I was against that. And when I talk about circumventing democratic institutions, well, actually, their actions now show how much disregard they have for our work. On page 301 of the bill, there's the ability of the minister to circumvent any legislation except the criminal code. Why? In order to advance projects in the national interest. So what does that mean? It means legislation is meaningless because a minister can get up one day and say, this is an important project, and it's more important, it's important to put national interest first. And so, well, actually, the ability of a minister to do that, who has concentrated power to decide that a project can go forward by circumventing environmental legislation, financial legislation, transportation legislation, can circumvent even Indigenous consultation, Madam Chair. This is the same government that under Justin Trudeau was speaking to us about truth and reconciliation and how important it was. Well, what happened last week? It was a disaster when it came to the environment and science. What happened? Votes were bought in Alberta for a new pipeline. That once again, I understand that my colleague's uncomfortable.
The contents of what we're having right now, which is a debate on my motion, I'm not exactly certain how any of this diatribe has anything to do with this. It is relevant, Madam Chair.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Puis, vous savez, moi, je
Thank you,
tente...
Madam Chair. I want the people listening to us understand what's happening. And I realize, I say to our witnesses, it's important that you're here today. But, you know, the truth always comes out. And there are people who are listening to us. And people are going to see what that truth is. This is a government that has no environmental conscience, that couldn't care less about science and research, and that's buying votes in Alberta, just to sort of calm things down. That's what's been happening. And, you know, this government decides to showcase environmentalism. However, it's the facts that speak. This is the same government that bought a pipeline, cost $34 billion. You know, it has a name. It's called the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And they were going to be using fossil fuels and export energy to Asian markets. And everyone who has come before us today, everyone that came before us on that said this was counter to science. And who came before us? It was the chief science officer. And I put this question to that advisor. I said, do you think it's dangerous that the government is going to circumvent laws? Do you know what she said? And I'm going to quote her. She said, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare that the government gives itself the ability to circumvent legislation and not make science and research-based decisions and evidence-based research to decide which projects it's going to support. So I understand why my colleagues today are so uncomfortable. You know, they're doing somersaults, verbal somersaults, but people deserve to know the truth. And I'm quite happy to take a few minutes here. And I'm not embarrassed to say before the witnesses who are here today to say this is the truth. Last week, these members didn't want to invite the minister, and now all of a sudden, oh, the light bulb went off. Now all of a sudden they want to bring forward the minister. But not unconditionally, not based on a committee decision, based on their own conditions. So 3 months later, 3 months after the budget, that's when they want to bring the minister. Well, I think that once again displays a total lack of transparency in the proceedings. And I'm going to repeat what my colleague opposite said. He spoke about openness and collaboration, and I appreciate that. I appreciate his good faith. Perhaps he's a little naive. It's maybe a little early to pass judgment. But if you look at the meeting of the 24th of November, you'll see that there was filibustering. And what does that mean? That means people speak, but they don't say much. They simply just sort of circle around the issues, and they string things out in order to be able to adjourn the committee. Now, perhaps they did some soul-searching. Perhaps they decided that, last week's acrobatics weren't necessarily a good thing, and so all of a sudden they bring forward a motion today. But no one's able to explain what happened. What they did say was that, well, you only wanted the minister to speak about one topic in particular, but that's false. I said last week that the minister come to speak about her mandate and other related matters, not just AI. So that's what I'm saying, Madam Minister. The truth always comes out. And when you do good things in life, you have nothing to hide. And this applies to projects as well. When there are major projects, if they're good ones, why would they have to circumvent legislation? This legislation is in place because it's good legislation, like environmental legislation. Take the pipeline that was approved last week. There's been no consultation with First Nations. It's going to be imposed. It's going to be imposed on British Columbia. British Columbia's agreement was not requested. And I'm really curious to know this. Show me scientific studies. Show me evidence. Unbelievable, I heard a colleague say. I know it's unbelievable. But this is the chief science advisor who said to us that this is a nightmare. It's a science nightmare. It's devastating that a government that claims to support science does not want to undertake scientific studies to see if their project is a good one. And so now they have legislation that allows them to circumvent other legislation. In the history of Canada, I want to be on the right side. I want to be on the side of people who don't need to hide the truth. I want to be one of those people who agree to rigorous science, who respect legislation. Now, sometimes legislation does have to be amended, yes. But once again, I would ask people to look seriously at the hypocrisy of the government. They fabricate, they use a crisis, in this case the tariff crisis, in order to push their own agenda. And allow me to go even a little further, Madam Chair. I mean, the Prime Minister isn't just a good banker. He also has some pretty good contacts. So today, one wouldn't be wrong in wondering whether this benefits certain economic interests. Does it benefit people who are close to him? Madam Chair, in the Prime Minister's office, there's Michael Sebia. Well, we know him well in Quebec. We know that he worked at Hydro-Quebec and he worked at the Caisse de dépôt et placement in Quebec. And now he's working here within the federal government. He was here before as well at the Department of Finance, and I was a member at the time in 2019. And I was on the Public Accounts Committee. And Mr. Sebia, Madam Chair, he sold his shares in Brookfield. He felt that it was important that there be no conflict of interest if there were going to be federal legislation. He wanted to make sure that people would not have to question whether or not these are projects that are going to serve the financial interests of third parties. But, Madam Chair, here's the thing. It wasn't important to the Prime Minister to sell his shares. What he did was put it in a blind trust managed by two people on his team. So let's play a game, Madam Chair. I'm going to play with you, but I'm going to appoint the referees. See, that's how this government works. So I think we have the perfect right to ask ourselves some questions. Is the government truly serving the interests of the population of Quebecers, Canadians? If this government has nothing to hide, and if they don't want there to be any conflict of interest, well, step back. Say to yourself, I'm here to serve the population. Now, I can understand that our Prime Minister has a past as an investor, a CEO of Brookfield. I understand that he should step back from his shares. But we are accountable. We are supposed to be impartial and accountable when we decide to serve the public. And the Prime Minister had decided not to sell his Brookfield shares. And I'm pleased that the Conservative members have already said this kind of thing as well. Whenever the Prime Minister has gone around the world, there's always someone from Brookfield who's around, whether it be nearby or not, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be mining infrastructure, whether it be port infrastructure. So it's making us pretty uncomfortable.
Questionne la pertinence des
I'd like to question the relevance of the member opposite's point. We're debating a motion that involves the Minister of Industry, and now we're talking about international trade. I'm sorry, I believe it goes beyond the scope of the motion.
Merci. Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca, je vous demande de garder vos commentaires sur la motion dont
Dehors du Parlement, parce que ça vient.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, it's important what you do outside the Parliament because that can have an influence within the Parliament. And I look at the reactions of the government members. They want to hide the truth. They don't want us even to talk about this. They are so uncomfortable, Madam Chair, that they want to cut me off because they don't want me to say what their boss has done. But people aren't stupid. People are not stupid. I have a lot of respect for people who are listening to us today. But I would be pretty uncomfortable if I were in the shoes of my colleague opposite today. You know, I'm an empathic person, and I was very sad last week when the former Minister of Culture and Canadian Identity decided to step down. Stephen Guilbeault, we know he's a good person. He's an activist. He was an environmental activist before jumping into politics, and he has convictions, which is maybe not always the case of some of his colleagues in government. You know, it's always nice to get a good salary and to be part of the ranks. You have to choose your battles. But Mr. Guilbeault last week did something that was half honorable, I would say. He stepped down from his... You see, once again, there's an attempt to cut me off.
Je m'excuse de vous interrompre.
chose, la motion porte sur
Once again, this motion is on the invitation of Minister Joly and Minister Solomon, not about an invitation to Mr. Guilbeault, so I don't see the relevance of what my colleague opposite is saying. Thank you.
It's relevant to the motion we have on the floor.
Merci, Madame la
Yes,
Présidente.
please.
Alors, je
Thank
poursuis
you very
toujours.
much, Madam Chair. So I'm still going to speak to this quest for truth because it's so important in science and innovation. People who do research are on a quest for truth. They bring forward hypotheses, and then they want to check those hypotheses against the facts, and they get an opportunity to see whether their hypothesis is right or wrong. Now, Mr. Guilbeault stepped down because he was uncomfortable with the decision that was made, the science supposed-based decision.
Relevant to this motion we have on the floor.
Oui, alors,
Okay, so thank you.
merci, Madame la Présidente. C'est le lien que je
Thank
fais.
you,
Alors,
Madam Chair. This is the connection I'm trying to make. You know, the reason I've put all of this before you is so that we can understand what's happening currently. Our colleagues are so uncomfortable about inviting the minister that they're trying to push it off to the latest date possible. And they do the same when it comes to, they did the same when it came to Mr. Guilbeault, so much so that he became a prisoner. And he had to leave because he was making everyone so uncomfortable, and he himself was so uncomfortable. And here today, people don't want to hear me. They don't want to hear me say this is not a government that believes in science. This is a government that wants to export fossil fuel-based energy, and this is something our government wants to hide today. So I'm telling you all this. Why? Because when Minister Joly comes, yes, it's important that we speak about her mandate, but I'm also looking forward to asking her other questions. The discussions, for example, that she has with the Prime Minister, for example, that have to do with science. The Prime Minister isn't just anyone. Yes, he worked for Brookfield, but he was also a former UN envoy on climate change. And do you know what he said? He said that fossil fuel energy have to remain in the ground. And then he did what he did last week, the opposite. He tabled...
Blanchet-Jonca, MP Rana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable member, he has a Parliament forum. He can discuss all these things over there on the Parliament floor. But in here, we have only science and research. I think we should stay on our mandate. And our honorable, all those witnesses, they are waiting in here too, please. Thank you.
MP Blanchet-Jonca, if you can please keep your remarks relevant to this motion. Yeah, it is important.
Madame la Présidente, oui, je répète ce que j'ai dit.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm going to repeat what I said. I said it's important that when the minister comes, and obviously I hope she's going to come before this committee for the holidays because that's what I asked in my motion on the 24th of November. But, you know, I've seen this a few times now. There are a few members, not just one, not two, not three. They want to cut me off because they're uncomfortable with the facts. Now, I don't claim to always know the truth. I also don't claim to also act well necessarily. But if they're uncomfortable with what I'm saying, they can say so. I don't have a problem with that. What makes me uncomfortable, Madam Chair, is that last week they had one position, and then 7 days later they have another one. And that shows once again how deep this goes, how much a part of their DNA this is, that lack of transparency. Now we have a motion before us today. And it's not a motion that says the minister should come as soon as possible. Because Mr. Deschênes earlier said, oh, we'd like it if the minister comes earlier. Well, as quickly as possible, here's what they put in their motion today. This motion was tabled this morning. We did not receive an email.
This is the fourth time we've heard the same thing now. So while I appreciate Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca's frustration, we can't deal with, if the purported intention is to deal with the matter at hand, repeating himself is not helpful.
Yes, so please make sure that it is you keep your comments relevant to the motion, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, je reviens toujours à la motion. J'étais là-dessus.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to the motion. Actually, I was speaking about it. And once again, I do have empathy. I understand that my colleague Noor Mohammed is uncomfortable. Maybe he wants to interrupt me because he's so uncomfortable. I would ask him to look at the minutes of the last meeting. He said that we could use social media clips and reports were pointless because nobody reads them. And now he's a bit uncomfortable. So he's trying to sort of change things, change his words. I've been here since 2021, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I have always worked openly and collaboratively in order to move forward the committee's work. Now, the motion calls on the minister to come by February. Why? That's not consistent. If it's so important that she come before this committee, why only come 3 months after the budget? I have several questions I want to ask, and there are people I meet on a daily basis who have questions. And they want answers to their questions. Why do I feel so strongly about the minister coming before the 11th of December? Well, it's because I had been trying to track her down for more than a month. I had sent emails to her team members, and now I'm going to tell you something even more hurtful and striking. And I hope members opposite won't take this personally. But once again, I want the truth, and I want people to understand the truth. Members of the minister's office didn't even send confirmations or acknowledgments of the email I was sending. That's embarrassing. We have a G7 minister who's supposed to be able to manage their logistics, their agenda, and her staff cannot even take the time to read the emails that come from another parliamentarian. That's how huge the lack of collaboration is on the part of the government, and how little they want to work with the opposition. I'm going to make another point, and I hope members opposite think about this over the next few days and next few months. They are a minority government, and they were elected democratically as a minority government. And what does that say? That says that they're supposed to consult opposition parties, not just after the fact. Because here's another fact, and why I wanted to invite the minister soon. That's because there were never any consultations here within this committee. There was no consultation on budgetary issues with opposition members. We didn't talk about that. Nobody contacted me. Nobody tried from the office of the minister to speak to me. There was nothing about consulting opposition members. There was nothing about building public policy together. And there is one thing that I noted that my colleague said opposite. You know, he was talking about research in French, etc. Well, I don't have to ask the minister to come before us to learn that there is zero amount of money being put forward into French research. I mean, you just have to look at the budget. There is nothing at all, no dollars for science in French. And we know why this is happening. And what it shows is that it's not a priority. It's not a priority of this government. And this government has no vision. And that's the question I also want to put to Minister Joly when she comes before this committee. As my initial motion called for, I called for her to come in November because this would be her last opportunity to come before the committee. I don't mind bringing her back. I don't mind bringing her here on the 15th.
For our witnesses, it's almost noon. So sorry for that. Like, I know you came all the way from Toronto. We were on the same flight to appear before the committee. Is it possible that you can stay a bit longer? Maybe we will do is that, like, hear from the witnesses for this panel and the second panel after we are done with this. So are you guys okay to wait? Okay. Yeah. Okay. What about you, Mr. Gupta?
I am fine to wait.
Okay.
But my colleague does have a flight.
What time you have to leave?
It's at 2 o'clock.
She has a 2 o'clock flight.
So soon you will have to leave. Okay, just like, let's see, like another 5-6 minutes how it goes. Yeah, let you know. Yes.
If I may, perhaps a solution would be to propose a motion where we extend hearings by a day so that these witnesses can be invited back to attend.
Okay, that will be like once we deal with the motion we have on the floor. Let's deal with it and then we can go.
My deepest apologies for today, but these are witnesses that we should be hearing from, and we're in a procedural debate. But I was looking forward to this conversation this morning, and
so let's get through this, and maybe we will have an opportunity to have the witnesses give us their testimonies.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, moi, j'espère de couper ce court,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope that this will wrap up, but I do think it's very important to state the facts. The problem goes deeper than it may appear. Now, I've explained several facts. I've wanted to make the public aware as well, because that's my role as a member of Parliament. The public has a right to get answers to their questions. And as a member of Parliament, when I meet people from the scientific community, people who are involved in research and innovation, even they aren't getting answers from their MPs. So it is a problem. What I'm seeing today is this. On the government side, they want the ministers to come, but they want it to be based on their conditions. They want her to come later. I have no idea why. And maybe she'll be moved to another portfolio. I don't know. I mean, I like her well enough. And I want her to be able to answer questions here today. But the problem runs deeper, and it's this. We have government colleagues here who want to manipulate us. They want to manipulate negotiation. They want the minister to come, but they don't want there to be a report. They don't want this to be brought to Parliament. Madam Chair, there's no work done in committee that is not reported to Parliament. And that's where the hypocrisy lies. They're saying it's fine for me to table a motion. It's fine to bring the minister to the committee. They've said they've checked her agenda. Everyone's fine. But here's the condition. No report. No, we can't allow this to make too much noise. So here we have this G7 country minister to come forward. It costs millions of dollars to run this committee. But, Madam Chair, the government members say it's not important for them to report on this to the House. Now, I see my colleague Noor Mohammed saying that that he doesn't agree. I mean, he did say himself that nobody reads reports, which is a total lack of respect for the work of Parliament. And he himself last week said what? What did he say? He said, well, no reports. People don't read them. And that's what I'm very uncomfortable with. I never thought I would see that in my life as a parliamentarian, that a minister of a G7 country appear before a committee and that members of her own government say it's so unimportant what she'll have to say that the rest of Parliament shouldn't be made aware of it. Well, what is that hiding? It's hiding something else. You know, when you're doing good work, I'll say this again, you have nothing to hide. You can share.
Notwithstanding the personal attacks, notwithstanding the rules in respect of decorum, putting all that aside, the member opposite has just pointed out for you, for all of us, and you're welcome to go and read the record, that he's repeating himself. So, like, if there's something new, I'd love to hear it, but otherwise, like, there's this absolute waste of time.
Thank you. And MP Blanchet-Jonca, if you can.
Vous savez, Madame la Présidente, en politique,
You know, Madam Chair, I've learned one important thing in politics. Sometimes you have to repeat something over and over again for people to understand the message. And you have to do that so that people understand where the truth lies. Because as my colleague, MP Noor Mohamed, said last week, he said that social media clips, are more important. He said that on the 24th of November last. He said, invite the minister, you can do your social media clips, and according to him, that is more important than presenting a report to Parliament. Well, I'm embarrassed. I'm vice chair of this Standing Committee on Science and Research, and I am embarrassed that a colleague would say this public. He can think it. No problem. I think all kinds of things that, you know, I might not want people to know about. However, Madam Chair, he put out there publicly what his vision of democracy is, what his vision of governing is. And basically, that the work of the committee is unimportant. You know, he said government reports or this committee's reports aren't important because nobody reads them. Two things. This is repetition. I don't think we have any memory problems here around the committee. And second, this is not on the motion. We have witnesses waiting. So I'd like our colleague opposite to stop repeating himself and to keep it relevant. Thank you.
There's no repetition, and your points are relevant to the motion we have on the floor.
Merci. Vous savez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Truth is always relevant. And I see MP de Chanteriot, MP Noor Mohamed are uncomfortable with the truth because it makes them look bad. You know, it shows their true colors, once again, and the government's true colors. It doesn't give me any pleasure to repeat the truth over and over again, but I want to make sure that my colleagues opposite understand the mess they're in, understand their behavior. This is public. And I know that this could be used against me. That's why I'm talking about the facts. I'm talking about what people have said. And they may disagree with me. That's fine. But what I want my colleagues to tell me today is this. And I hope that the way we proceed in this committee can be changed in the future, because I'm very uncomfortable with where this committee operates. How? I'll just sum up here and conclude on this, conclude on everything I've had to say that I think is very, very important. Very, very important for the public and the scientific community. I'll ask this. Why? Last week, did they not want the minister to come? And why did they engage in filibustering? You know, we weren't even able to wrap up our meeting, and it's public. And here they come back again today on the 1st of December. And it's as if my colleague took out his magic wand. He said, I have a solution. I spoke to the minister. Her dog is healthy. Everything's fine. And she'll be able to come in February. Well, Madam Chair, what changed in 7 days? I understood that it did snow a little. But once again, we can see that my colleague wants to impose his own conditions. Why? Because they want to protect the interests of their political party, of their government. He doesn't want the minister to come before a specific date. And here's another thing I want to understand. Why would they not want to report on what is said here by the minister? I'm very, very concerned about this. And earlier on, I challenged the government members to tell me that I'm wrong, to tell me that I'm wrong about that it not being important to report to the House. I think it's very important that people here understand what state this committee is in. Paralyzed, basically. And yet its work, the purpose of its work is to strengthen scientific research in this country. But here we have a government that says one thing and does the opposite. They say it's important for the minister to come, but not unconditionally. Transparency has its limits, according to them. We think maybe it'll work with her agenda in 3 months after the budget. And, in Quebec, we have a very important motto, and it's Je me souviens. We will remember. And I remember what happens in this committee. And I remember that there has never been a situation in which this committee has not presented its work, reported on its work to Parliament. If we want to be transparent, if we all truly want to support transparency when it comes to the work of this committee, we shouldn't just be talking about it within our committee. There are 343 members of Parliament. So this information isn't just important for the few members around this table. We aren't the only ones who should hear what the minister has to say. What she says here is important, and it has repercussions outside the committee. It should be communicated to Parliament. Everything that is said here is connected to what happens elsewhere. So that's why I'm emphasizing the importance of this. I hope that government members opposite will understand, truly understand, that when we do work here, there is a point to doing reports. And second, these reports aren't just for us, our colleagues sitting around the committee. When you have a debate in Parliament, day after day, there are issues that are debated. And these aren't necessarily things that will have been debated in committee. There might be infrastructure projects. There might be health issues. There are all kinds of issues that are raised in Parliament. But today, there's going to be a precedent, and I think it's a very dangerous precedent.
Just 1 second. MP Blanchet-Jonca, just if you can hold for a second. Yes. Madame Agostino, you would like to leave because you have a flight?
Well, I'm trying to see if I can move it.
Okay. Check in, let me know.
No, well, he's going to filibuster till then. Wait, don't hold her here. Yeah.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, je souhaite conclure rapidement.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I really do want to be able to wrap up. I understand that there have been some conversations. Madam Chair, I do hope we'll be able to adopt the motion that I tabled on the 24th of November. The motion was never adopted, not because I didn't want it to.
Which was moved by MP Noor Mohammed, and then we can go into any other thing. So,
Oui, je comprends. Oui, c'est en lien, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez,
I understand. It's connected to this. Once again, I disagree with the way that the committee has proceeded with this motion. I tabled one on the 24th of November. You decided to suspend the meeting. In the end, it was adjourned. It was adjourned without a vote. And today there's a new motion that has been brought forward that kind of skips over the first initial motion. And that goes against the standing orders, our rules. So I'm saying that this is not a valid motion. Normally, we should have taken up this motion again that I tabled on the 24th of November. So there's that point as well.
And it was relevant to the point I made in regards to the appearance of the Melanie Jolie. So I said that yes, the motion is in order, and if you want to challenge, then you will have to challenge the chair's ruling.
Oui, Madame la Présidente, j'en comprends que c'est votre argument fatal.
Yes, I understand. That's pretty much a fatal argument, isn't it, Madam Chair, that we be invited to challenge the chair. I disagree with that way of proceeding. And, I went to see you in good faith last week. You told me that there would be a discussion, and we didn't end up having that. It was supposed to be a discussion on my motion, and now I see that you chose a different path. I think you made your choice. You chose to support a government member, and his tabling of a motion, and that mine would not actually be taken up again.
It was important for me to communicate that information in the beginning.
Alors, Madame la Présidente, je comprends que vous faites votre
Yes, I
travail.
understand. You're doing your job, and I'm doing mine. But I'm telling you what the truth actually is. On the 24th of November, I tabled a motion. And I want us to be voting on that motion.
Right now, we have a motion on the floor, which has been moved by MP Noor Mohammed. So we have to deal with that before we go into any other thing. So are you wrapped up?
Non, je voulais vous poser une question, Madame la Présidente, par rapport à ça.
No, I wanted to ask you a question about this. Why is it impossible to continue debate on my 24th of November motion? Because the meeting actually was never adjourned with a vote. It was... You wanted to suspend it initially so that we could call the chief science advisor back, which I'm uncomfortable with. Why are motions being tabled and then they're not voted on, and then a meeting's adjourned and we don't go back to that motion?
Was adjourned. At that time, MP Baldinelli moved that motion, and it's a non-debatable motion. And when I asked everyone, majority of the people said yes. And if you wanted a recorded vote, you should have asked for a recorded vote at that time. But majority of the people said for adjourning the meeting, and the meeting was adjourned.
Merci.
That's what.
Ben, écoutez, j'entends ce que vous me dites. Peut-être que dans la
Thank you. I hear what you're saying. Perhaps because it was so rushed, well, that's how things happened. But I'm telling you how I experienced it. It was so fast. I think what it meant is that people wanted to shut down the committee. I wasn't even able to raise my hand in time because the gavel hit the table. So I would ask you to be a little more open so that we can...
Quick second with the witnesses. If you would like to take a 5-minute break to go to the washroom or anything, I know it has been over an hour.
Just worried about my colleague's flight.
Yeah.
Okay, have you been able to book, or you have to leave?
So, yeah, because I'm not able to change my flight.
So you will have to leave?
So, if I may, I was hoping to at least read my statement and then take any questions offline.
Okay,
Is
so
that
by what
possible?
time you have to leave?
So probably 12:30 is the late. My flight is at 2.
Okay. Yeah, 12:30 she has to leave. So I will ask for the consent of the members if they would like to.
Madam Chair, and as I indicated earlier, I would propose a motion that we extend this hearing by a day to at least invite back our witnesses from the first hour so that they could fully take part in not only presenting their
Blanche
statements.
Jonka has the floor. I just wanted to talk to the witnesses. You are next. I'll come to you once MP Blanche Jonka completes. But I just wanted to ask the witnesses if they have to go to the washroom or they want to get something.
Sorry, Madam.
Yes, they can do that. Yes, MP
Madam Chair,
Mohammed,
sorry,
if it is
just-
related to that. Otherwise, MP Blanche Jonka has the floor.
As he wants it, I'm just asking a logistical question because we have two witnesses that I think we want to ask questions from. If Dr. D'Agostino has to leave, and I think we would, it would be good if we had an understanding of the committee and with her before she leaves what we would like to do. I mean, if Mr. Blanchet-Jonca wants to talk till the cows come home, that's his prerogative. I just want to know what we're doing with these two lovely people who have come that I think a lot of us have questions for. 3. Well, yeah, sorry. Miss
Murphy.
Yes, Dr. Murphy doesn't have a flight to catch, I don't think, but we have two folks that at home or so not here. So yeah.
In order to deal with anything, I'm coming, MP de Ruyter, we will have to have a unanimous consent if we can hear from Dr. Agostino before she leaves. It cannot be a majority thing or one person. It has to be a unanimous consent if we would like to hear her remarks. Because MP Blanchet-Jonca has the floor. Yes, MP de Ruyter, if it is related to this.
No, you just said what I was.
Okay. So, yes, MP Blanchet-Jonca.
Je souhaite juste qu'on puisse, évidemment...
Once again,